A Rockford man wanted for an April shooting is taken into custody in the state of Washington. Officers in Kent arrested Christian Turner using information provided by the Rockford Police Department.
34-year-old man will spend more than 6 years behind bars for buying and selling cocaine and having weapons in Rockford.
This man, Rogelio Ibarra, pleaded guilty earlier this year to several charges.
7 men are in custody after police bust a drug ring.
Police say the suspects were running a drug enterprise in Rockford. These arrests are the result of a months-long operation by city, state, and federal agencies.
Rockford police say a 20-year-old man was chased by a gunman and ended up dying just across the street. Shot spotter and phone calls led them to this house on Adams Street near Swedish American.
Recovered 2 guns late Friday night. Scope officers arrested Edgar Rodriguez and Victor Gonzalez outside a home on Kent Street near West Street.
Rockford, founded in 1837 on the Rock River, grew from river trade and manufacturing into a city known for music and sports, producing names like Kurt Elling, Bun Carlos, and Fred Van Vliet, and landmarks such as the Coronado Theater. That proud civic history now sits alongside a recent spike in gang-related arrests and federal indictments for guns, drugs, and violent crime, prompting calls for both tougher enforcement and greater investment in prevention and reentry. Community leaders, clergy, and neighborhood groups have pushed for mentoring, job programs, and stronger reentry support to keep young people out of gangs. While law enforcement says coordinated raids and federal prosecutions are needed to dismantle organized crews, the story of Rockford today is therefore twofold: a city with deep cultural roots working to protect its neighborhoods, and a community wrestling with how best to turn public safety gains into lasting opportunity.
Police recovered 2 guns late Friday night. Scope officers arrested Edgar Rodriguez and Victor Gonzalez outside a home on Kent Street near West Street. Officers say they saw one of the men throw a gun to the ground. The loaded gun also had a laser and extended magazine on it. Another handgun was found inside a car parked at the house. Both Rodriguez and Gonzalez are charged with not having a FOID card and unlawful use of a weapon by a gang member.
On Friday, July 19th, Rockford police responded to the 700 block of Kent Street after receiving reports of a weapons violation involving alleged gang members. During the incident, officers observed one of the suspects attempting to discard a loaded handgun. 2 men, identified as Edgar Rodriguez and Victor Gonzalez, were taken into custody. Both face charges including unlawful use of a weapon by a gang member and possession of a firearm without a valid firearm owner's identification FOID card. Following their arrest, the suspects were transported to the Winnebago County Jail, where they await further court proceedings.
34-year-old man will spend more than 6 years behind bars for buying and selling and having weapons in Rockford.
This man, Rogelio Ibarra, pleaded guilty earlier this year to several charges. Ibarra admitted in a plea deal that he was a leader of the Rockford chapter of the gang Insane Unknowns. And between March of 2021 and January of 2022, he would give to other gang members to sell it on the streets and fund the gang's activities. Ibarra also said he owned several guns despite being previously convicted and sold them to other people.
A Rockford man has been sentenced to more than 6 years in federal prison for drug and firearm offenses. Rogelio Ibarra, identified by authorities as a leader of the Rockford chapter of the Insane Unknowns street gang, pled guilty earlier this year to distributing and unlawfully possessing firearms. On September 12, 2024, U.S. District Judge Ian Johnston handed down a 76-month prison sentence. According to the Department of Justice, Ibarra admitted that between March 2021 and January 2022, he supplied drugs to fellow gang members, who sold it on the streets to raise money for the gang's activities. Despite a prior felony conviction, Ibarra also acknowledged possessing and selling 5 firearms, some of which he transferred to another individual.
7 men are in custody after police bust a drug ring.
And law enforcement warns criminals. Investigators are not stopping there. Police say the suspects were running a drug enterprise in Rockford. These arrests are the result of a months-long operation by city, state, and federal agencies. The help came not just in enforcing laws, but with funding to local departments through Project Safe Neighborhoods.
7 men have been charged with federal crimes for operating a drug enterprise in February 2020. A federal investigation into a Rockford drug network led to the arrest of 7 men and a multi-count indictment. Leaders Derek Jacobs Aka Showtime, or G, and Rico Turner were charged in a conspiracy to distribute for activity between July and August 2019. Jacobs also faced separate counts for distributing, while Turner was charged with multiple drug distribution counts. Michael A. Alexander Big Mike and Rashid C. Davis Rock were indicted on additional drug distribution counts. Marcus Raymond, Terrell Hunter, and Charles Davis were charged with illegally possessing firearms as convicted felons.
A Rockford man wanted for an April shooting is taken into custody in the state of Washington. Officers in Kent arrested Christian Turner using information provided by the Rockford Police Department's Intel unit. In April, investigators say Turner and another suspect, Elijah Ford, exchanged gunfire with another car in the area of West State and Kilburn. Montrese Harris and a 17-year-old girl were in the other car. Harris was shot in the head. He survived. Harris and the teen girl have already been arrested.
Christian Turner, a Rockford resident, was arrested in Kent, Washington, after being wanted in connection with a gang-related shooting in Rockford. Authorities say the incident occurred on April 21, 2019, when two vehicles exchanged gunfire across several locations, including West State Street, Mulberry Street, and Kilburn Avenue. During the shooting, 19-year-old Montrese Harris was struck in the head but survived with non-life-threatening injuries. Following the investigation, Rockford police identified Turner as a suspect and obtained an arrest warrant. Working through the department's intelligence unit, officers were able to track him down in Washington, where he was taken into custody. Another suspect, identified as Elijah Ford, remained at large at the time of Turner's arrest.
That's right, Eric. Maybe Rockford police say a 20-year-old man was chased by a gunman and ended up dying just across the street. Shot spotter and phone calls led them to this house on Adams Street near Swedish American just before 6 this morning. Police say it all started with an argument between the man and 23-year-old Quentin Smith, and shots were fired. But when the victim tried getting into a car on East State, police say Smith opened fire, hitting the man and woman driver. The victim died at Swedish American.
Quinton, often reported as Quentin Smith, was arrested in June 2019 and charged with first-degree deletion, aggravated battery with a firearm, and unlawful use of a weapon as a street gang member in the fatal shooting of 20-year-old Joseph Hernandez. According to prosecutors, the deadly encounter began with an argument that escalated into gunfire and a subsequent chase near the 1300 block of State Street. Some social posts also reference Adams Street. Smith was convicted in late 2022 and, in March 2023, was sentenced to more than 55 years in prison. Carl "Short Dog" Ford, once the dominant leader of Rockford's black gangster disciples, stunned many when he won a sentence reduction that led to his early release in 2019. Ford had originally been sentenced to life in prison on drug convictions in November 1994 after prosecutors said his crew, known locally as the Mob, ran a violent, wide-ranging drug operation in Rockford. The life term was later reduced to 30 years and, with good behavior, trimmed again to 25 years, setting his release for November 9, 2019. At the height of his power, Ford's organization was accused of brutal enforcement tactics and open displays of force, drive-by shootings, armed patrols, and ruthless discipline for anyone who crossed the operation. Prosecutors described incidents in which suspected theft or incompetence was met with threats or violence. Witnesses say Ford himself once allegedly fired an Uzi at a house on Chestnut Street, and he faced multiple gun-related charges during the early 1990s. In 1993, a broad crackdown followed, with dozens arrested as part of an investigation into an extensive drug distribution network. Ford was charged in the resulting federal drug conspiracy case. Ford's sentence reduction reflected shifting views and policies, as well as community and political support for reconsidering lengthy mandatory terms. His release after serving roughly 25 years sparked debate. Some welcomed a former leader's chance at rebuilding his life, while others feared the potential return of an old street power. Ford has since spoken publicly about reentry struggles and the need for stronger support systems for formerly incarcerated people. Carl Ford Jr., the son of former Rockford gang leader Carl "Short Dog" Ford Sr., was arrested last week on multiple drug trafficking charges, including manufacturing and delivering drugs, according to court records. Ford Jr. has a prior record, He received a 10-year sentence for armed robbery in 2012 and was later sentenced to 2 years in 2017 after being convicted as a felon in possession of a firearm following a police chase where officers say they found 2 handguns, drugs in his vehicle. His father, Carl Ford Sr., once led the Black Gangster Disciples in Rockford and served decades in prison on drug-related convictions before being released in 2019 after a petition reduced his sentence. Since his release, he has advocated for people re-entering society, telling reporters in 2021, "We paid our debt to society, so why do we still pay?" Baraner Douthert, a known member of Rockford's Three World Gang, was arrested Sunday after a dramatic vehicle pursuit and collision with police equipment. Police spotted him driving a Lexus with license plates reported stolen from Loves Park. He was already wanted in a previous police encounter, but fled rather than stop. During the pursuit, Douthert allegedly backed up his car at high speed, narrowly avoiding hitting an officer as he slammed into a squad car's open passenger side door. The impact caused the door to strike the officer inside. Then, after pushing the police vehicle into the roadside, Douthert tried again to strike it with the Lexus, once more almost hitting a nearby officer. Despite the collisions, he continued resisting. His car eventually hit a privacy fence. Ignoring repeated orders from officers to stop and exit the vehicle, Douthert remained inside until police broke out a window to pull him out. After a brief struggle, he was taken into custody. 2 loaded firearms were found inside the vehicle. Law enforcement charged him with a series of serious offenses: unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, possession of a firearm, aggravated assault, criminal damage to state property, fleeing to elude, and resisting arrest. K-9 units helped Rockford police apprehend 4 suspected gang members during a chase on Sunday afternoon. Officers spotted the men walking down the middle of Tay Street, but when approached, the group fled. Malachi Brown was caught immediately and found carrying a loaded firearm. He now faces charges of unlawful use of a weapon by a felon and unlawful use of a weapon by a gang member. Additional patrol units, Rockford Housing Authority officers, and K-9 teams were called in to track down the remaining suspects, recovering 2 discarded loaded guns with extended magazines. Harris was charged with unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, unlawful possession of a weapon by a gang member, possession of a defaced firearm, and resisting arrest. Anderson faces charges of unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, unlawful possession of a weapon by a gang member, and resisting arrest. The final suspect, Montrell Anderson, 19, was taken into custody after officers located him with a firearm equipped with a laser sight and extended magazine. Police also recovered 22 grams of Mary in his possession. He is charged with unlawful use of a weapon by a felon, unlawful possession of a weapon by a gang member, possession of a stolen firearm, armed violence, possession of a controlled substance, and resisting arrest. Rockford police ended a 30 to 40-minute standoff Wednesday after officers from the gang unit located a vehicle near 15th Avenue and Nelson Boulevard occupied by 4 adults and a 15-year-old. The suspects initially refused to exit the car and eventually surrendered. Police recovered 2 firearms at the scene and charged all 5 occupants with multiple weapons offenses. On March 2020, Rockford police responded to reports of multiple shots fired on the 2300 block of Quincy Circle and later traced a suspect vehicle to the area of Auburn and Kilburn Avenue. After following the car to the 1200 block of School Street, officers conducted a traffic stop and say all of the passengers except the driver fled on foot but were quickly captured. Investigators found shell casings from 2 different guns in the street and discovered that 1 home and 2 parked cars had been struck by gunfire. 3 men were arrested and faced charges including aggravated discharge of a firearm. Police say MC Clendon and Anderson also face gang-related weapon counts, resisting arrest, and lack of FOID card allegations. A jury found Ricardo Jaimes guilty of first-degree deletion, attempted deletion, and aggravated discharge of a firearm in the demise of 16-year-old DeMarcus Robinson. Prosecutors say Jaimes acted as the wheelman during a gang-related ambush. His brother Isaac allegedly fired the shots after Jaimes displayed a rival gang sign from a silver Chevy Tahoe. William Patrick, who was with Robinson, was wounded but survived. After less than 2 days of testimony, the 12-member jury deliberated about 2.5 hours before returning the guilty verdict. Jaimes faces decades behind bars. Prosecutors say the combined sentences could include 75 years for the deletion count plus additional terms for the other convictions, and he is scheduled to be sentenced no 15. Rockford's story is complicated. A city with proud cultural roots, homegrown talent, and historic neighborhoods, yet one also wrestling with a recent spike in gang violence, firearms, and drug prosecutions. The arrests and federal indictments we've covered show law enforcement taking an aggressive stance to dismantle organized crews. But local leaders and residents stress that enforcement alone won't heal communities. Lasting safety will require parallel investment in prevention, jobs, mentoring, and stronger re-entry supports so those leaving prison don't return to the same cycle that produced the violence. If Rockford can pair smart policing with meaningful community programs, it stands a better chance of preserving its civic pride while protecting its neighborhoods for the next generation.